Hello everybody, welcome to the second episode of African Football Weekly. Sorry it's been a little bit late. I've been traveling and I've been preparing for my trip to Gabon. So the good news is that I'm going to be in Gabon from January 11th to February 5th, and I'll be providing a little bit of extra coverage from there. I don't know if we're going to do like vlogs or just videos, but if you have any ideas, let me know. So yeah, this is a review of Group B of 2018 World Cup qualifying. This group has Nigeria, Algeria, Zambia, and Cameroon in it. For me, a lot of people have called it the group of death. For me, this is probably the toughest group in African World Cup qualifying. I think what we're going to do first is look at the results, and then we're going to go over each of the coaches and the teams. So in the first match day, Nigeria beat Zambia 2-1 in Ndola in Zambia, and that was a really impressive victory because that was Gernot Rohr's, their new coach, first match in charge. Now if we go back a little bit with Nigeria, they're obviously not in the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations, and that was surprising because remember, this is a team that won the tournament in 2013, but they had a little bit of problems with their coaches, with the federation. They had a lot of different coaches. Sunday Elise came in, he had a problem with the veteran goalkeeper Vincent Nyema, who ended up retiring internationally. And so they hired Gernot Rohr, and everything was in a sort of state of flux. There was no stability. We didn't know what to expect. And since then, everything's been going really well. So Gernot Rohr, for most people, would be your typical African journeyman, in African football. He bounces around from national team to national team. But I actually got a chance to listen to him speak on a few different shows during the last Cup of Nations while he was coaching Niger, and he comes across as actually very well spoken, very intelligent, and he seems to know what he's talking about. So I think he's probably a coach to keep your eye on. I like what he's done with Nigeria in that he's liberated their attacking players, and he's trusted youth. So what we noticed, especially in the first match, for example, is how well the likes of Alexi Iwobi and Kelechi Iheanacho, Moses Simon, all of those players, how well they played, and they seem to have a lot of the coach's trust, which is nice, very nice actually in Africa, where players are usually they don't make their debuts that early. So they had a very dynamic attacking force. He was playing a 4-4-2 that was more like a 4-2-4 with Obi Mikel and Ogenyi Onazi in midfield, players who have been a constant for Nigeria for a long time. You have Elderson Eshiajili, you have Leon Balogun, you have William Troost-Ekong, and maybe Wilfred Ndidi on the right. So that's a very good defensive lineup. You have very good central midfielders, and you have young attacking talent. So Nigeria looks like a team that they look very threatening, and if they got off to a quick start with that 2-1 win over Zambia. The next match they played was against Algeria, and they won that match 3-1, and that was very impressive as well. Again, Algeria for many people were favorites going into this World Cup qualifying. They were favorites going into the last African Cup of Nations. They were ranked #1 on the continent for a long time. And they played this match in Uyo in Nigeria, and nobody really knew what to expect. This was either going to be a confirmation of Nigeria's impressive start, or it was going to be a false dawn. And what we saw was this time Rohr played a 4-3-3, and Nigeria's attackers were lethal. They capitalized on two horrendous defensive individual errors, and Victor Moses, who has been playing spectacularly with Chelsea, scored. And so Nigeria, again, they look like a side that they're not going to be playing the 2017 Cup of Nations, and unless they do something dramatically wrong, they're favorites to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And we're not going to see them again until, we're going to see them in friendlies, but we're not going to see them in an official competition until August 2017. But they're definitely a side to keep an eye on as sort of making a revival, sort of rising from the ashes. The next team we could probably look at is the next in the standings, Cameroon. Their coach is Hugo Bruce, Belgian caretaker, who spent some time in Algeria at GS Kabylie and Husseinde. His time at GSK was actually quite productive. He did very well. but it was cut short by the death of Cameroonian striker Albert Ebose. His time with Hussein, he was very mediocre for then, and that's what I don't understand. When you look at his career, he doesn't seem like a coach that warrants the position of Cameroonian head coach. Cameroon's they should be a world-class team, and they deserve a world-class coach, and I'm not sure he's that. He's sort of continued on Volker Finke's style, where Cameroon, they don't score a lot of goals, they don't concede a lot of goals, difficult to beat, but they don't win very easily as well. The big story going into the Cup of Nations for them is that 7 players have refused call-ups. On one hand, I understand it. I mean, this could be a video on its own. On one hand, you understand the players, because the players that denied the call-ups are mostly the players who aren't going to play. And so what they're saying is, I'm going to be going to Gabon, I'm going to be sitting the bench, and I'm going to lose my spot, with my club as well. But on the other hand, once your country call you up, you almost have an obligation to show up. So you can see both sides of the argument there. So Cameroon, they drew their first match in Algeria, 1-1. In that match, they were trailing early. Hilal Soudani scored off of an Islam Slimani flick-on, and very quickly Cameroon equalized via Benjamin Mukanjo. In that match, Algeria dominated possession, but it was sterile domination, a lot of useless possession, and Cameroon were very dangerous on the counter-attack. So they could have scored maybe two or three goals. I think a draw was a fair result though, and they were happy to go away with that result. The second match was against Zambia. This is the only match of the group I didn't really watch against Zambia, and but honestly the result doesn't surprise me. Again, 1-1. Cameroon doesn't score a lot of goals. They don't concede a lot of goals. Zambia are a tricky side. So for me, the biggest problem, tactically speaking, is their central midfielders. They have the spine of the team is solid, and they have a young talented goalkeeper in Fabrice Ondoa, Aurelien Chejou and Nicolas Nkulu. Chejou, who played at Galatasaray, and Nkulu, who played at Marseille. Very experienced, very good on the ball, tough on their man as well. Likes of Onyango on the left, Alain Nyom on the right, again experienced. But in central midfield, they've played the likes of Sebastian Siani. They have Georges Mondiac, who hasn't played yet, but Arnaud Djoum. Really central midfielders who, especially for Cameroon, they have a long history of having very talented central midfielders. And here they're really banal. They're really insipid. It's just they don't really inspire you. So I think that's probably their weakest point. They create very little, especially in central midfield. Even their wingers, for me, Choupo-Moting is a player that should start. On his day, he's probably one of the best dribblers in Africa. But they've been playing Karl Toko Ekambi, who's very dangerous but also very inconsistent, and Edgar Sali, who for me brings nothing to the table. I don't really think he's a good player. Their strikers, however, are very interesting. They can play Benjamin Mukanjo, who started his career, I believe, as a winger at Nancy and stuff, and he's brought that mobility into an attacking role, and he's been very successful with Lorient in scoring goals. So Mukanjo and Vincent Aboubakar, who played at Porto, and I think who's now at Besiktas, who plays in front of Mukanjo, and he'll play on the defender's last shoulder, and Mukanjo will be running the channels. So their front two and their back two in defense are quite good. So they have a decent spine, but the central midfielders are what I'm worried about. They create very little. They rely on their wingers, who are streaky, but can do the job once in a while. And for me, you can't really rely on your wingers, streaky wingers at least, to get the job done. So I really don't like their chances of progressing from this group. Next are Algeria, and if Nigeria had some stability issues, then what can we say about Algeria? This is a team that, after they had qualified to the 2017 Cup of Nations, they were the second team to qualify after Morocco, so they had a lot of time. Their coach Christian Gourcuff had resigned. He just didn't feel welcome in Algeria, and he felt like he wasn't making as much progress as he would like. Gourcuff resigned, and he left the federation with ample time to find a successor. They ended up hiring a Serbian coach named Milovan Rajevac, who had taken Ghana to Luis Suarez handball away from being the first African team to qualify for the semifinals. He had a good reputation, but he hadn't been in a job for the last 5 years. So they brought in Rajevac, who didn't speak French nor Arabic, very little English, He couldn't communicate with the players. There were reports coming out that said he didn't know the players or their positions. He was asking some attacking midfielders to play in defense. And eventually, after that first 1-1 against Cameroon in Algeria, some of the players approached the staff, and they approached the president of the federation, and they said, basically, he's not the right man for the job. Can we bring someone else in? Now, that wasn't received very well in Algeria because the public saw it as player power intervening, because maybe some of the players weren't starting who felt like they were entitled to start, and they're saying, if the players can fire the manager, then that's not a good sign, obviously. Nevertheless, Raivac was removed after the first match, and they brought in George Lekans just 2 weeks before the match against Nigeria. So you have a lot of instability within the Algerian ranks, and with that instability comes a lot of questions about tactical questions. We don't know how Algeria are going to line up with the formation. We don't know which personnel the new coach favors. So there's a lot of question marks for Algeria going into the Cup of Nations, and that's going to be the story that dominates the headlines. But let's talk about the results. So against Cameroon, again, they started quickly. They had a lot of fans behind them. And after scoring an early goal, as soon as Cameroon equalized, they had a lot of sterile domination, and they couldn't really create anything worth getting excited about, which is worrying, because that carried over into the next match. And you have to wonder how much, again, of this is because of the instability at the upper levels. So that carried over into the next match against Nigeria, where in the first half, first of all, they gave off 2 very stupid individual errors. But then after that, in the first half, they couldn't really create at all. They never really threatened the Nigerian goal. The encouraging thing is that in the second half, for a spell of maybe 15 to 20 minutes, they really bombarded the Nigerian goal, and it looked like they were going to make a comeback. Nabil Bentaleb scored a 25-yard scorcher, and they really pestered the Nigerian defense, but they couldn't get that equalizing goal. Instead, they got caught on the counter-attack, and Nigeria scored, and Nigeria won 3-1, setting Algeria back with only 1 point now. Nigeria has 6. So now, everybody's wondering what they're going to be able to do at the Cup of Nations. If they can get some positive momentum, if they can get a result, that'll be encouraging, and maybe they can carry that form into 27. As for Zambia, they have Wetsin Nyirenda as a coach. He's a local coach, and the Zambian Federation see him as an interim coach. They had previously said that they're looking to hire an expatriate coach, obviously somebody that's foreign, but they've been using local coaches for a while now, from Honor Jenza to, I forget who was after that, but now Wetsin Nyirenda. And Nyirenda had a very successful spell with Zesco United in the CAF Champions League. I believe he took them to the semi-finals this year, and he knows the Zambian league well, and they've been producing a lot of players since, so it reconfigured most of the team, but most of the spine is the same. So you look at Kennedy Mwini, their goalkeeper, who has definitely more than 50 caps. I don't know exactly how many, but he's been playing for a long time. He won the 2012 Cup of Nations with them. He's a goalkeeper that's probably one of the better penalty kick stoppers on the continent. Very good with his feet. He can also take good penalties. Very experienced, one of the leaders of the team. You have Stapira Sunzu, centre half that was previously linked with Arsenal, who's had very good spells in France, and again part of that 2012 Cup of Nations winning team. He partners up with Tambo. You have Kapumbu on the left. These guys are kind of new, but again up the spine you have Nathan Sinkala, the likes of Collins and Mbisuma up front, who's very bullish and scores a lot of goals. So Zambia have up the spine, they have a lot of experienced players who have been competing with that national team for a long time, and on the periphery they're sort of injecting new talent, not in midfield but especially in defense and up front. Playing off Mbisuma, you have the likes of Jackson Mwanza or Evans Kengwa, who have had good spells in Africa, but in midfield you have Brentford Kalamba, Chizamba Lungu, again veterans of the 2012 Cup of Nations. So Zambia, despite having a lot of veterans, they're a team that can make a lot of, again, stupid mistakes. We've just seen that even some of the bigger nations can do that, like Algeria. But it's kind of demoralizing too. It makes it seem like they're not they're not at that elite level yet. Again, they lost their first match to Nigeria at home 2-1, and the second match they drew with Cameroon. Now they have that doubleheader against Algeria. They're the one team. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd really I would never bet on them. I don't see them making it out of this group at all. If I were to rank the chances for these 4 teams, it would be Nigeria, Algeria, Cameroon, Zambia. I really don't think they have a shot. So for them, it's more going to be about rebuilding. Now they have a big layoff. I think they're going to try to bring in an expatriate coach and try to build for the 2019 Cup of Nations. So that's it. Hopefully I'm going to come back with another video very soon. And if you have any questions, you can include them in the comments or on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Alright, peace.